Lists in Python offer a powerful way to manage information. Here I'm going to start with a series of lists that were defined in a previous video, and I've added one more list just called Eastern States. So if you look at the earlier videos, you'll see that these were some lists that I had used in that video. But you get the idea. If you know what a list is, then we just have several examples of lists here. Now, in this video, I want to show you how to manipulate the data in a list. So up at the top, I've given a sequence or a list, I guess, of operations that you can do. So we can concatenate lists together in the same way that we concatenated strings, as you saw in earlier videos. We can append an item to a list. We can extend an item to a list, which is very similar to append, except with the extend operation, you can add an entire list to an existing list. So that's kind of the same thing as concatenating two lists together. We can determine how many elements there are in a list using our length function that we've seen already with getting the length of a string. You can reverse the elements that are in a list. You can sort them, and you can sort them if they're strings, they're sorted alphabetical, or if they're numbers, they're sorted in ascending order numerically. You can insert an element into a list at any point, or you can remove an element from a list at any position. So let's go through some examples and look at all these operations. You can make a new list by concatenation. So here we just use the plus sign to do a concatenation operation. I'm going to make a new list. I'm calling it the state list, and it's going to be equal to the combined lists Western states plus Eastern states. So the Western states were those that are highlighted, and I just added the Eastern states list, so you'll see that list here. Now, this state list is going to be a new list that contains all of those states in one list. We'll print that list out so that we can see what the result looks like. So let's just run each of these examples, and we'll look at the output on the screen. Let's bring over the output. And here you can see that when we printed out state list, now we have the list. It begins with this square bracket on the left. It ends with a square bracket on the right, but it has all of the states that were previously in the Western states and the Eastern states. So you can make a new list from two or more existing lists just by using the plus sign between them. So if you wanted to add even more states over here, you could do another concatenation operation over there. So you're not limited to just two. You can concatenate as many together as you want. Now, let's look at concatenating a couple of lists that contain different kinds of information. And let's check to see if we can do that. So now, let's see if we can concatenate lists that have different types of data. So I'm going to have a new list. I'm going to call it mixed_list, and I'm going to concatenate the vegetables list with the zip codes. So the vegetables, they are just the strings that contain names of vegetables, but the zip codes are integer numbers. Now, will the system allow me to do that? If so, then we will output the list to the screen. We'll print out the mixed list, and let's just insert a little string in front of this so that we can keep up with the various things we're printing out to the screen. So now I'm going to print out the words mixed list, colon space, double quote. And you can use a comma here. I'm using a comma because this mixed list is, it wouldn't let me print that out without converting it to a string. But if you don't want to do the conversion, the str conversion, then just put a comma here, and then you can print this thing out, which is a string, comma. Then you could print this thing out here, and that could be any other type that you want. So you don't always have to do that concatenation operation that I have shown in previous videos. Let's see what we get. We'll bring the output over so we can see it. So here's our mixed list. We get the mixed list, and we start out with vegetables. Then we put the integer values for the zip codes in there. So it is legal to concatenate lists that contain different types of information. You can also add you can also add an item to a list using append. So if you do the append, then it has to go on the right side. So it's appending to the right side of the list. In this case, let's append something to our baseball teams. Okay, the baseball teams, we had some West Coast teams listed up there. And if we want to append something to that, we use this thing called append, which is a method. So we have baseball teams, the existing list, dot append, and then what do you want to append to that? So you can put another string here and you can append that to the list. So we'll add the Oakland Athletics, that's a baseball team. We'll add that to the list. Then let's print out our baseball teams and we'll see how it has changed. Now, you know what? Let's do a before and after here. So I'm going to copy and I'm going to paste here. And we'll print out the baseball teams before we append athletics, and we'll print it again after. Okay, so let's go ahead and run this program. We'll bring in the output. Here we have the baseball teams before we did any changes to them. Then after we did the append, baseball teams.append athletics, then you can see we've added athletics onto the end of the list. So append is pretty simple. If you want to add additional items onto a list, you can use append to do that. Let's look at another operation that we can do. Extend. With extend, you can add a list into an existing list. So it's like append in that it goes on to the right-hand side, but you can put more than one item in here. The way that you have to do it, though, is we have to make up a new list. So I'm making up another list called new_states, and I'll just put New Jersey and New York in there. Then I want to extend the eastern states by adding in the list new states. So the way we do that is we have to use the name of the list instead of just using these strings as you see here. The extend is used like a method. So you have to use the dot notation and then extend. So if I'm going to extend my list eastern states, the way I do it is I list eastern states, that's the name of the list, and I use the dot and extend, but the extend method requires that you have a list here. So that's why I had to create this list first. Okay, so I have to use new states there. I couldn't just put the bracket New Jersey and New York directly in here. It syntactically would not let me do that. So the argument must be a list. Now, as we print more stuff to the screen, it starts to get jumbled together. So I'm just going to do a print with 2 \n's, and that, in effect, skips a line. Then let's print out the eastern states now that we have extended it by adding New Jersey and New York. So here we see the output. So now I've got the skipped lines in there so that we can separate these various examples I'm showing you. So eastern states now, we have Florida, Georgia, South Carolina, Virginia, and Maryland. That's what we started with. But after we did the extend, we added a new list in. So now we have one longer list that now is still called eastern states. So you can modify these lists by doing an append, you can do a concatenation, and here you can see you can do an extend if you want to. The result of this is the same result we would get if we did a concatenation of eastern states with new states using the plus operation. Let's look at some more of the functions that we have available to operate on lists. We used the length function previously to find out how many characters were in a string. Well, that same function can tell us how many items are in a list. So we can use len, and we can use that on a list. So this just tells us how many items there are, and I'm calling it length over here. Then we can just print that out to the screen, and it will tell us how many items we have in the list baseball teams. So with the print statement, I'm going to print out the baseball teams list has, and I'm going to close that with a double quote. And here you can see I'm also using the commas to separate items. Otherwise, I'd have to convert length to a string. So I just want to show you a different way to do that. You don't always have to use the str function. You can separate items with commas and they'll print out just fine. So this will print a sentence then. The baseball team list has, and then length is the number that came back here when we got the length. And then we'll just print out the the word teams to complete the sentence on the end. All right, so now let's run this example. Let's bring in the output. So when we get the length and we print out the baseball teams list has, then the length is 6. So since we did extend, or we appended athletics to our baseball teams list previously, then we added one more to what we had to begin with. So we have 6 now. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So we have 6 items in the list baseball teams. So you can use len to get the length of any list that you're working with. Another operation that you can have available, or that you do have available to work on a list, is the reverse method. So the reverse method, all it does is to reverse the order of the elements in the list. It is also a method, so it uses the dot notation. So if I want to reverse the order of the items and vegetables, I can do it with the reverse method. And here's the syntax. It's just the name of the list dot reverse with the empty parentheses here. So we would like to print out what that reversed list looks like. So let's just put our code in here to do that. So we'll print out the reversed list of vegetables, and then we'll print out the actual name of the list is vegetables as well. Now let's bring the output back. I can find it. Here we go. So here's our reversed vegetable list. Okay, so our original vegetables, and we can go, let's go look at the original ones so that we remember what they are. Okay, so let's scroll up, and you see we start with corn and we go all the way to broccoli. So that now has been reversed. So now broccoli is first and corn is on the right-hand side. So the reverse method just reverses the elements that are in a list. You can also sort a list. This is a pretty powerful tool to have. If you need to put things in alphabetical order or numerical order, then the sort method lets you do that. So let's just pick one of our lists and let's sort it. This time let's use numbers. I want to use the high temperatures. So if we look at the high temperatures, that's just a list of some real numbers that we made up here. If we want to sort that, then we can use the dot sort method with the empty parentheses. So almost all these things, you just put the empty parentheses on the end. So we'll print out the high temperatures before we sort them. Then we'll use the dot sort method in order to sort them. And then let's print them out after they're sorted. Now let's run the program. And now you can see the output. So before the sort, here are the original real numbers, and here after the sort, they are sorted in ascending order. So 87, 8, 9, all the way up to 100.2. So the sort method is a really very powerful thing that you can use to sort your data. Now let's see if that works, or let's see it does work. So let's take a look at one of our other lists that involve strings, and let's look at how those are sorted. Here I'm going to use the eastern states. So eastern states, those just consisted of the strings of state names. Then we use the sort in the same way we used it with the numbers. You just use the dot sort method. Then I'll print out the sorted states, and now the eastern states list has been sorted alphabetically, so we'll see that. I'll bring the output over. Then we have the sorted states, and you can see they're alphabetical: F, G, M, New Jersey, South Carolina, and so on. So if you're sorting strings, they're alphabetical. If you're sorting numbers, they're just in ascending order numerically. If you wanted them to be sorted in say descending order, then you could sort them and then you could use reverse. So you can get them in descending order if you wanted to. And the same thing here, if you wanted to sort them in kind of reverse alphabetical order, then sort them and then reverse them. So you can combine these things to get what you want. Now, let's look at something else here. What if we try to sort data that's of a mixed type? Up here, we made a mixed list of vegetables and zip codes. What if we try to sort that? Well, let's try it and see what we get. Okay, so here's our mixed list. That's the name of the list. If we try to sort it, then can it sort it or can it not? Let's try it and see. Well, we get a lot of red on the screen, so that must mean something isn't going right. So we could not sort that list. Okay, mixed list.sort. No, we could not do it because it has integers and it has strings, and it simply doesn't know how to sort those. So it gives us an error message. So one thing you should note here is that this isn't a legal operation. So let's just make a note to that effect. Okay, so we'll resume. And you can see that I've made a note here, error, you cannot sort mixed data types. But if I leave this line here, then it's going to give me errors the rest of the way. So I could either delete it altogether or I could make it a comment by putting the hashtag symbol up here. Okay, so that's what I'll do. Now this entire line is a comment and it will not attempt to be executed by the system. We have two more operations that I want to show you. This one's called insert. Okay, so I'm going to use the insert method, and I'm going to insert something that's in the middle of the list. So you can put an item into a list anywhere you want. So the way this works is as follows. You give it the index here, and then you list the thing that you want to go there. So what I'm saying with this is that in the list Western States, I want to insert at index 1 this string Arizona. Okay, now let's print out the Western States and let's see what we get. But first, let's go look at what is located at index 1 in Western States. So if we have Western States, that's index 0 for California, and index 1 is Oregon. So when I do an insert, then Arizona is going to go in here where Oregon appears now, and then all of these will be shifted over to the right. So we can do an insert. So let's go ahead and run the program and look at the output. So here we have the output, and here's the list. We have California, but now notice that Arizona has been inserted at index number 1. Oregon, Washington, all those have been moved over to the right. So you're allowed to insert an item anywhere in the list. Just pick the index that you want. The last operation I want to show you is going to be the pop operation, that's called, where we can delete an item from a list. So let's print out our original list of baseball teams. Then if you want to remove an item, then let's look for something. I mean, if you know the index, then you could just put the index in here and you can pop from that index. But let's suppose I don't know where the index is. So let's go back and we can look at that index method, and it will find the index for us. So let's suppose I want to find the index of Padres, because I want to remove Padres from the list altogether. So I'm going to use the index method first. That's going to give me the index of Padres, and I'll save this in variable index. Okay, now don't confuse the variable index here with the method index over here. Okay, this thing is a method. This is just a variable I'm using. Now that that'll give us the index. Now if we want to remove that, if we want to remove Padres from the list, we use something called pop. So let's add the code in for that. So the method is called pop. So once you know the index, and if you know it ahead of time, if you know it's index 4, you can go ahead and put the number in there. But you have the list as always. The method is after a period, pop, and this is going to delete the item at that index. So it will delete Padres from the list in this case. And then we'll print out the baseball team's list to see indeed whether or not the Padres is gone or not. Let's bring in the output. So now this will prove my point. The original list, here you see the original list of the baseball teams. It had all those in there. And we wanted to remove the Padres. Okay, so the Padres showed up here. Okay, what index is that? Well, we know that Dodgers is 0, Giants is 1, Padres is 2. So when we did the index operation, it gave us the number 2. And then we did the pop operation, and it removed the item at index 2, which was Padres. Then we printed out the list again, and sure enough, Padres has been deleted from the list. So in this video, I have given you a lot of operations. So it's probably something you want to look back on when you start working with programs using these operations. And you're probably not going to remember everything after seeing this just one time. So you can bring the video back up and fast forward or find the position within the video that has the function that you're looking for. So remember again that here you have all these operations that you can perform when you're working with a list. Depending upon what your job is, what kind of application are you trying to solve, then you can use a combination of these methods, and really they're all methods, I guess, except the plus operation up there. You can use all these methods, and let me correct that. Not all of these are methods. The length is not a method, but most of the others are. So you can use these operations to manipulate your lists in order to get whatever solution that you're trying to get to. And I guess that's good enough. Let's stop the video at this point.